down from each bill. And these are the bills that were, these are the bills that were heard this week. Does James get them all?
Yep.
Well, I'll be
Hey,
the judge of that. Hold on.
all right. We're live streaming in about 10 seconds.
I thought we were going till 11. Okay.
You're on, buddy.
Yeah, you missed 1082, which was the public hearing yesterday.
Okay. Well, let's get going. We'll just put it down at the bottom.
Jeez Louise, you guys
Okay,
are-
I'll introduce this here. So my name is Rob. I'm Yak Valley Lodge 10 president, and we're hoping to keep everybody informed of what's happening in this legislative session with bills in regards to law enforcement, because right now there's a lot of different things that people are worried about in law enforcement. There's a lot of bills that could affect us. And so for this first meeting, we're going to have James Shrimpsher, who is the West Side Vice President, as well as the Legislative Committee Chair, and our lobbyist, Michael Transu. So the first bill, well, Michael, I think you wanted to talk a little bit before we got into this, so go ahead.
Yeah, hey, James, do you want to load up anything before I go?
Nope, we're good to go.
All right. So, hey, everybody. So thanks for the lead in, Rob. Just at a really high level, legislative session started Monday afternoon this past week, first day of a 105-day legislative session. So that puts us ending somewhere around April 24th, give or take, assuming they stay in as long as they say they're going to stay in. I mentioned James and Rob. I'll provide to Rob, and he can post it on the website, the final legislative schedule. Finally got approved yesterday. The Senate had approved the schedule earlier in the week, but the House met for the first time virtually yesterday. So the schedule is finally final. And we'll get that posted so anybody who wants to can see on our website the legislative schedule, cutoff dates, which are very important. And as we have these later on, you can kind of reference that schedule when I talk about cutoff dates, policy cutoff dates, original House cutoff dates, and stuff like that. So we'll also be providing a weekly report on the weekends. I'm hoping to get to them on Saturday and get them up and posted, but sometimes I think maybe they might scoot into Sunday just a little bit. And those will provide you all with a schedule of bills that we're interested in and upcoming hearings the following week that are coming up on bills that the FOP is interested in. And I believe, and if they're not, we can include links. And if anybody has any question, feel free to, reach out to me. Pretty straightforward. And then below the calendar items will be a list of all of the bills that we're tracking. Put them on a tracking list in terms of high, medium, and low priority and the FOP's position. So probably just keep you all informed of the high level ones straight away, and then so that the list doesn't get too unmanageable and long, leaving all of the medium and low priorities just off the list. Typically, I don't move bills up into a higher category unless and until they've had a public hearing. There are a lot of Republican bills that are often introduced that never get a public hearing. So we keep those on the low priority list so that the list is manageable. All right, so I talked about that. Hey, James, are we in a position to take questions at all, or do we just kind of keep moving? Oh, you're on mute.
Yeah, just kind of keep moving for this time. What we're going to do next week is I'm going to post the link to the meeting itself. We have it set up much like the hearings. We have a webinar going. And so people will be able to attend the meeting and raise their hand and ask questions, and we can let them into the meeting just to ask questions. But for today, we're just going to be streaming live. If they want to put something in the comments section of the live stream on Facebook, I'll read it in. How's that?
That's great. That's perfect. All right, so we started this past week, governor's budget at the beginning of this week, again, 105-day session. Governor's bills and budget documents are beginning to trickle out, both the biennial budgets and the supplemental budgets. And when I talk about biennial budgets, remember that the state is on a 2-year budget cycle. So in long sessions, which this is 105 days, that's where they adopt the biennial budget. And then any supplemental budget for the last 6 months of the state's fiscal year, which is the first 6 months of any calendar year. Everybody's virtual. There are both in the House and the Senate, probably maybe 2 or 3 handfuls of leadership folks on both sides of the aisle, on both sides of the rotunda in Olympia. It's really just the folks who are there present that need to make the place function. So if you ever watch TVW, as James and I now begin to do that the legislature's in, you'll see the speaker is still there with plexiglass all around and the clerks down below. And then that's really about it. Majority leader, caucus chair on both sides of the aisle, and attorneys there. The speaker has 2 big screens in front of him or her so that they can see all the members. It's very clunky, but they're making it work. Likewise, all of the public hearings that were held this week and are going to be held next week are all virtual. James and I were in one hearing, and we'll talk about the data collection bill here later, but when we're in person in Olympia, a big hearing is, 60, 70, 80, 90, 100 people maybe that are there and signed in and participating. On that one bill, there were 161 people signed in. And I think, as I recall, James, all in favor of the data collection bill. So, there's some real definite downsides to not being Olympia in person, as James will attest to. And I'm happy to talk to anybody about not being in person and, not being able to have those 2 and 3 and 4 and 5 minute quick conversations with staff and legislators. But they're making it work. So some votes are beginning to come out of committees next week. So we'll see how their voting process goes. So we'll go from there. Again, high level, the Senate Republicans replaced their leader. Senator Mark Schessler stepped away. Senator John Braun was voted in. Senator Braun's district is kind of the Longview area. Some of you may know him. He runs a company called Braun International, and he basically retrofits emergency vehicles, more generally ambulances. So a good friend of the FOP. And if we ever need anybody else, Senator Schessler, as you all know, also a strong advocate and friend of our organization. And also remember, in the Senate Republican caucus this past year, we elected Senator Keith Wagoner, who's up in the Cedro-Woolley area, as our legislator of the year. So good friends in that caucus. Like I said, governors sworn in, rare third term, kind of unheard of in Washington history. Most governors just go 2 years. There are, like I said, a number of bills that he's beginning to trickle out of his office. One that isn't on our list that we're going to talk about today that we know is coming is bills related to the independent investigation task force that James was on. That will be sponsored in the House by Representative Deborah Entenmann. And I can't recall who the Senate sponsor is. We're also expecting a piece of legislation with regard to independent prosecutors or independent prosecution at the state level. Again, not on our list. Those bills have yet to be introduced, but they'll be added as our list grows, quite frankly. So with that, I'm going to spend a couple of minutes talking about bills that were heard this week that James and Marco participated in. And then I'll talk a little bit about kind of what's coming up next week. So the first bill I want to talk about is House Bill 1054, and that is what's conveniently called the tactics bill. That was heard in Representative Roger Goodman's Public Safety Committee on Tuesday. Lots of testimony, law enforcement, mostly opposed, community groups, mostly in favor. As I mentioned, I think this is the one that had, no, this isn't the one. James testified other on that bill. We had several provisions of it that we were okay with a couple of minor tweaks, and then one provision with regard to canine usage that we were opposed to. There was a negotiating session on that bill on Friday that I participated in. I have the substituted legislation, which will be considered by the committee next week. I don't know that there's going to be everything in there that we like. I also wanted to say that at the hearing, it came up that for purposes of a lot of these sections that the defense, why am I blanking on the name of the defense? The defense of necessity. So if somebody was in the fight of their life, whether or not they could be held liable or a violation of policies, our council has unequivocally stated that the defense of necessity is always there for a law enforcement officer where deadly force or you're in the fight of your life is warranted. So from that
Hey, Michael,
standpoint, yeah.
Just for the benefit of the people watching on Facebook, which we have quite a few, in reference to LVNR and chokeholds, the national FOP, along with about 12 other national police organizations, signed in 2017 what is called the National Consensus Policy on Use of Force. In that document, it puts chokeholds and vascular neck restraints at the level of deadly force. And what Michael's talking about, as the bill is written, the legal analysis from our staff attorneys here at the Washington State Fraternal Order of Police is that as the bill is written, the necessity defense, so if you had to use it in a deadly force situation, then you would be covered. Otherwise, you're not allowed to use it. That's how the bill's written now.
And so, and kind of, as I always say, James, I'll put a finer point on your point. So what came up at the hearing was that defense of necessity, because we and other law enforcement groups specifically asked to have a couple of sections in that bill amended to specifically allow for the deadly force exemption. And what we were told is that the common law and the law out there allows for that defense of necessity. So we're going to have that as sort of a recalculation of our position on that bill and on the substitute. And having said that, it'll help us kind of hone in on a couple of other things as well in that bill. Also know on all of these bills that I'm going to talk about, James and I are on track to meet with the minority leader and Representative Clifford to kind of strategize a little bit about the hearings that are coming up next week, in particular amendments on the bills that we're talking about in the House. And then also know I'm going to coordinate a little bit with my colleagues on the lobbying side as well to strategize at a high level on what seems best moving forward in terms of number one, what amendments, number two, when best to provide them. So the second bill is House Bill 1089. That's the Attorney General's, that's the Representative Ramos audit bill. And remember that in between 940 and when an independent investigation team statewide department is built up, there's going to be an interim time where the local independent investigation teams are going to have to continue to work. During that time, there's really no sort of audit or oversight, if you will, of that process. So we suggested a long, long time ago, James and me, about this potential audit bill and housing it in the state auditor's office. And that's exactly what this bill does. We suggested about 4 or 5 technical amendments to it. And asked specifically that a provision that does allow the Criminal Justice Training Commission to ask for an audit of a process through the state auditor's office. And I don't think that that section is going to come out, James. What we did suggest is that if the section is going to stay in, that it has some sideboards put around it so that the commission has at least some factual basis to request the auditor to go do an audit. So I don't know another analogy, and James, fishes a lot. So I don't know another analogy or metaphor other than I don't want them to have a fishing trip expedition on putting forth stuff forward. So.
Right. And I would just add to bills, or whenever there's a clause in a bill that says, yeah, CJTC can ask for an audit of a police department's investigation at any time, then it kind of creates a two things that stood out to me, questions from the legislators in the hearing, and they're exactly right. Mission creep. Where does this lead? Is this the door open to them becoming a whole statewide, more like an internal affairs or administrative affairs type entity? And so we want to be very careful when we put things into bills that would allow that to happen. So what I totally agree with Michael. If we can't get that section removed, then we put some parameters on when and how they can ask for one of these audits. Other than that, having the audit in place, which is a process audit, it's not to determine guilt or whether the findings of an investigation. It's just to show that all the rules that were negotiated during the rulemaking after I-940 for independent investigations were followed. So that's all it is a process audit. And so the finer points I will leave to Michael, but again, I think it's a good thing. It will show that our independent investigative teams that are stood up throughout the state are doing the right thing most of the time.
Yep.
So.
And I would say that I was a part of the negotiating meeting that happened last Friday. And James, it's funny, we suggested, I think about a month or so ago, the words process compliance audit. And I brought that up again, and the state auditor's office was on the line and accepted it. So I think it's gonna read a little bit better. Again, the one quirk on that is gonna be section 2. You remind me about the commission and rulemaking authority. Just for a second, I'll go back to 1054, which is the tactics bill. I believe the substituted bill is gonna do what we asked, which is the original bill asked that the training commission create some model vehicular pursuit policies. And we suggested that the commission not be delegated any more rulemaking authority, and that if there are policies that local governments need to do, just put it in the statute. And I think that's going to happen in the substitute. And also they took our suggestion about the data collection in section 10 on that bill. And again, the idea is to move all data collection over to the Attorney General's data collection bill, which I'm going to talk about here in just a second. So just to note kind of on James's comment on, kind of keeping the commission out of our knickers, if you will. So House Bill 1092, data collection, Attorney General's bill. We've been working with the Attorney General and Representative Goodman for several months on making this bill be in an appropriate political spot, meaning not in a state agency and not a place where police are overseeing police data. So not the State Patrol, not the Attorney General. And we've been working with the Attorney General's office, and this bill is in good shape. And James, I'll let you kind of elaborate. But basically, rather than having the data collection be of just the use of deadly force, this data collection process is going to put together the Washington State University, Seattle University, and a company called Police Strategies, although the bill doesn't call them out, but it does pretty narrowly define public-private partnership and public and private universities. Have that group develop basically a system and a proposal for Wazoo to house a vast majority and a significant more number of data points on what police officers do day in and day out. For those of you who want to see how that works, go to the City of Spokane website and look at theirs. Also, the Seattle has theirs up, James, and they use the same company. So that bill right now is looking in pretty good shape. All of those changes that I just mentioned were considered in a proposed substitute that James testified in favor of last week. That's the bill that had 161 folks signed up in favor of it. So that is one thing that will move forward that we've had a lot of good input on. And really for, as James has talked and looking at those dashboards, having 140 data points really does make the point on what peace officers do all day long, not just focusing on the very small percentage of deadly force incidences that have. So we think it's going to paint a really good picture of what we do and kind of disprove the narrative of the community groups on, how often somebody gets hurt when being addressed by a police officer. So with that, James, anything to add on the data collection bill?
So no, you did a very good job of describing it, and like Michael said, the who gets to do the data collection is very it's still not determined yet. That being said, the company that's been doing a lot of consulting is a company that is here locally and provides services to numerous police departments throughout the country. The great thing about their system, like Michael said, it's 150 data points. And the more comprehensive collection of data around use of force, the better for us. There is no data out there that collect for use of force data for the state of Washington. But one of the examples that the company used, that just data they were able to collect through public disclosure, showed that only less than 4% of all arrests resulted in a use of force, and less than half of a percentage point of those arrests resulted in a use of deadly force. And so those are really important data points to have out there if we're going to make data-driven decisions moving forward about police training, police tactics, and improving our relationships with our communities and having that transparency. Also, housing it outside of law enforcement is a great thing because it's available to the public. The law enforcement doesn't have to worry about the public disclosure aspect. And, it's not us, law enforcement, keeping data on law enforcement. It's a disinterested third party that researchers can go to, the public can go to, and law enforcement can go to find some valuable data.
Right on. All right, next few bills, our president Marco got to testify on. James got a couple of the we can support bills, and Marco got one of each. So the first bill is 5134, and that's Senator Wynn's arbitration bill. And while you look at the title, it looks like something we might not be supportive of, but it is something that we did support. And this is a piece of legislation that directs all arbitrations to PERC from law enforcement. It creates a pool of at least nine individuals who are going to focus on peace officer arbitration at PERC. So we know that most mid to small agencies already use the PERC arbitrator, and mostly it's the larger agencies that kind of use their own and go through a process of picking and choosing. So we hear a lot of anecdotal, anecdotal is probably too strong of a word. There's a lot of data out there, but it's scattered. And so this will provide, more of a central repository for arbitration decisions. And we hope that'll help, folks make data-driven decisions on arbitration rather than maybe following the posts of a couple of departments that are on the larger side who may have a lot of arbitrations in queue. Like we know the Seattle Police Department has, I think, upwards of 50 arbitrations in the queue. So Marco testified in favor of that bill. Senate Bill 5055. This is a bill sponsored by Senator Solomon, who works for the King County Public Defender's Office in the city of Renton. This is a bill that basically says that collective bargaining agreements in no way, shape, or form will include provisions ranging from things to notice to officers, how long things stay in employment jack files. And it's a list of about 27 things. And it's a list that we adamantly oppose. We and other folks in the labor community, Washington State Council of Firefighters, and I'm going to miss a few, also testified in opposition again. So the labor community was, unified and opposed to that piece of legislation. And while only directed specifically at law enforcement, the rest of the labor community, and us included, just view that as, an inappropriate start on pulling away on workers' rights. So we hope that the large amount of unity on the opposition side, particularly from the labor community, will be enough to keep that bill in committee and not moving along.
Hey, Michael, just for clarification, 5134 was Solomon's bill that we opposed, and 5055 was Wynn's bill that we supported.
Okay,
Yeah, sorry.
that's all right.
Michael, can you give us just a quick update? What is the status of you're giving us a brief overview of the bills, but what's the status? Are these still in committee? Have they made it out of committee?
Yeah.
Are they going to a vote on the floor? Where are we at? Just if you can hit that on each one, maybe.
Absolutely. So what I'm going through right now, and I'll tell you when I shift gears, what I'm going through right now is all the bills that were heard last week in public hearing in committee. So first week of session is all we have is committee hearings. The only floor action that we had this week is adoption of the rules of the bodies, adoption of the calendar, and the big sticking point was, well, this is just kind of getting in the weeds a little bit, and I know we have till 11, so maybe I'll do it. So during when the legislature is not in session, the governor has the authority to issue emergency proclamations, and the governor does so with the approval of both minority leaders and both majority leaders. And so you'll see those come out. You may have seen a few that could not get extended because somebody, mostly the Republicans, didn't want to authorize a particular proclamation going forward. When the legislature comes in session, the governor doesn't have that authority anymore, and the legislature must approve emergency proclamations. So the Senate and the House, being in both Democratic control, both reauthorized all of the governor's proclamations. The Republicans didn't think that was such a good idea. So those are the only things that were heard this week. So thank you, Rob. But yeah, we're in committees this week. Okay. And James, thank you for, so the Solomon bill is 5134 and the Wynn bill is 5055. So make a note of that. Last one I want to talk about is House Bill 1082. And that's the officer accountability bill, where it affectionately called CERT-DCERT. This is a bill that is just a ginormous bill. It is sponsored by Senator Peterson in the Senate and Representative Goodman in the House. Big bill, huge impact on law enforcement. There's a couple of provisions in that bill we like. There's a significant number of provisions in that bill we don't like. So we've been trying to work with Chair Goodman on skinnying this down in terms of how broad it is in scope. And we provided testimony on a number of sections that we believe need to be amended and tempered as it relates to, well, I'm just going to say, getting in the knickers of the day-to-day operations of peace officers. So that is a work in process. I think pretty universally, law enforcement was opposed to that legislation. Ourselves, WACOPS, WASPIC, troopers, and a little bit and it doesn't happen very often, but the Washington State Patrol command staff testified in opposition as well. Teamsters as well. So I think law enforcement was pretty unified in their opposition. Us maybe being the exception, because again, I think there's a couple of provisions in there that we could stand for. So that continues to be a work in process, and I know that Chair Goodman is going to put together a what I would call a working group. James and/or me will be on that, and we'll see how that bill develops as it moves through the rest of the process. So that's a look in the rearview mirror what happened last week in committee. Now I'm going to look just a little bit forward in terms of what's coming up in the week ahead. So on the House side, in public safety, there really isn't a lot going on this week for public hearing purposes. But what I will tell you is they're going to take a vote or take action on, I believe, House Bill 1054, the tactics bill, and House Bill 1089, the audit bill. We understand those, and they're called executive actions. So you may hear me use that description of when a committee votes. And other than that, there really isn't anything remaining for us next week in House Public Safety Committee. There's one bill in there, 1071, bias-based criminal offenses, and I haven't looked at it yet. But really anything for my purposes, as this session rolls along, the priorities will be anything related to police reform. So I've got that as a kind of a low monitor bill, James.
Michael,
Yes, sir.
two things you wanted me to remind you of was independent investigation task force bill and independent prosecutors. You wanted to touch on those, I believe.
Perfect. And as I mentioned in the front end, those bills are going to be governor request legislation and are going to stem from the governor's task force on police reform that James was on. And just know that you may hear about those bills. We've been consulted on those bills by some outside groups on the community side, on statewide independent prosecution. The governor's task force bill on independent investigations, we haven't seen that yet. That's going to be a Representative Entenmann bill. And as all we know is that she's working on it and has everybody's comments. Thank you for the reminder, Rob.
Hey, so real quick, here's as far as the legislative chair, and Rob, you're on the legislative committee too, as this tactics bill, and I really want to emphasize this, as it, they start to take action on the tactics bill, we're going to need people to contact their legislators. And over the next week, we're going to make sure a list of your legislators are out there and how to get a hold of them. We, like Michael said, this tactics bill basically right now really restricts the use of canine. And as most of us know, one of the most valuable tools that we have in our toolbox as police officers are the use of canine. And so, we're going to call for action and ask people to write or connect with their legislators about this topic. So again, that's House Bill 1054, the tactics bill.
Thank you, James. All right, so talked about the House side. On the Senate side for next week in the Senate Law and Justice Committee, on the 18th is the public hearing on the police accountability and / cert decert bill. James will be testifying in opposition with a couple of caveats on that bill like we did this week. Also next week in the Law and Justice Commission is a bill with regard to an officer's duty to intervene. I know that we've got, it's a bill that we're supportive of if it's changed a little bit. I'll say we had some concerns about that bill and expressed those to Senator Dingra about a month or so ago. And so she's aware of them. James, I got to relook at the bill again, but as I recall, I think we had like 5, we were okay with it, but we had like 4 or 5 or 6 suggested changes for her, which we will reiterate.
Hey, Michael, I want to pause just a minute and talk about the CERT, D-CERT bill. It was heard in the House, Representative Goodman's today or yesterday. And I get, like Michael said, we testified in opposition and we gave them a list of things why. And the same bill is, the companion is going to be heard in the Senate, next week, as Michael just said. I'm calling this a kitchen sink bill. It gives CJTC broad sweeping authority to decertify. It also allows members of the public to go straight to the CJTC and make a complaint on an officer, and they can initiate an investigation, suspend your certification, or pull your certification entirely. They don't have to wait for the agency itself to take action. And so this is worse than mission creep. This is just a total change in focus. So we need to really pay attention to this bill. Like Michael said, not only was every law enforcement group present testifying against it, but you also had individual agencies like the State Patrol testifying against it. Again, this totally changes the focus of the CJTC into more of a regulatory and, basically gives a second bite at the apple when it comes to disciplinary. As far as we're concerned, it circumvents collective bargaining agreements and how they're put together. It also usurps local control, for departments, and those things are bad. We need to be able to handle things on a local level to work with our communities, our command staff together to solve issues. We don't need the state coming in and taking over. So just want to bring that to attention. That bill is a lot, very encompassing, has a lot of stuff in it, a lot of stuff that is not good for law enforcement. The one thing that we do support is reshaping the training commission. Out of everything in that bill, there is one section that talks about reorganizing and reshaping the training commission. The big thing that's really positive for us, term limits on commissioners. As you all know right now, the law enforcement is very law enforcement heavy. It's also very heavy to management. And so we need to have a more fair training commission. And so because of those changes, we're in favor of that section only. Sorry, Michael.
What are you sorry for? Hey, no worries. That's great. That's great detail. One of the reasons I like working with James is we tend to kind of feed off of each other, and where I miss, I fill in, and vice versa. Where he misses, where I miss, he fills in. Okay, CERT, D-CERT in Peterson's committee, the last bill that's going to be heard. Well, I mentioned duty to convene in Law and Justice, and then on Friday, I think it is, he's going to hear Senate Bill 5089, which is Senator Cooterer's peace officer hiring bill, and basically sets a lot of minimum standards for peace officer hiring, including minimum age of 23, also including requirements for, well, not requirements, including application scoring enhancement by 10% for hiring folks with proficiency in another language, associate's degree, professional training, that sort of stuff, and training from reputable, intervention programs. We indicated to Senator Cooterer that we were not supportive of this, and but as introduced, the bill was as she mentioned it to us, James. So again, it does have the requirement that folks have the equivalent of an Associate of Arts or Sciences degree. So we talked to her about using maybe this as a platform for post-training, the post-training model. Again, she really didn't have much comment on our perspective on regionalized training, but my impression is this is a bill that she's going to stick with for now. And James, how's our testimony going to look on this for next week?
So it's my understanding that it's not going to exclude. So just to get into the weeds for 5 seconds, and I know we're coming up on 11 o'clock, but essentially this bill requires before you can be a police officer, you have to have a minimum of a 2-year degree in specific categories like social work, working with language, and so forth. What it didn't mention is military service. It's my understanding that that may be coming down the pipe, that they're going to make sure that military service is not affected by this. It just wants to broaden the pool of candidates, trying to a more diverse pool of candidates. If that is the case, we'll take a look at what comes in front of the committee next week before we make a final determination. But moving the hiring age from 21 to 23, requiring a 2-year degree, everybody that watches this should know that the FOP pays for your college education. This is a kind of a good way to highlight that. That being said, I feel that this bill probably needs a little bit more work. And like Michael said, we're going to sit down with the sponsor and try to work through some of these issues. And hopefully we get something that we can support at the end.
All right. I know you love it when I say this, James. That's my story and I'm sticking to it.
Just, I appreciate you guys today coming in here and giving your perspective on things. I think it's important to get this information out to the members. So those of you that are listening, feel free to share this with your other members of your lodge and get this information out to everybody. Our plan is to keep you updated through these type of, well, I guess through the Facebook page. We're doing it on a Zoom link, but it's broadcast to the Facebook page. I think weekly is the plan. Is that right, gentlemen?
Yes, sir.
Every Saturday, 10 a.m. We're going to, we're also going to start sending out the link to the Zoom meeting. People will be able to log in if they have Zoom, and they'll be able to ask questions and go from there. Again, this is just our way, because there's so many things in this legislative session that are coming down the pipe to deal with our profession. Instead of putting it on a sheet of paper, we thought this would be better. Hey, let's just go over it. And next week, we want to see if we can get some interaction with, our members a little bit more. If they have specific questions for Michael or I, we can get those addressed. So.
To answer your question, Ken, in the comments there, once we close out of this on Facebook, it'll say that the Facebook Live has ended, but you'll be able to go back and watch it. So if you came in 45 minutes in or something like that, you'll be able to watch it. It'll be on Facebook forever until either the state FOP deletes it for whatever reason, but I wouldn't imagine they'll do that. So you'll be able to watch it in the future. So.
So I'm looking at the numbers, and you probably are too. I think we had a total of 20 highlighted. So good first meeting.
And another thing, I shared it in our local lodge. If we can maybe have some of the other lodges do that in the future, so that people, it's like on our lodge pages where I shared it when we started. So.
All right. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you. See you next week.
Rob, thanks for all you're doing.
No problem.
Thanks,
you.
James.